You'll always hear people say, oh, you can't make a living out of art.
Right.
Yes, you can. And I've done it for 40 years. And I've been really blessed with that. I've done a combination of corporate where I do production work, Adobe, Illustrator, InDesign, things like that. And I've worked for a lot of large corporations. And then on the other side of my coin, I do the art. And I do fine art. It's all coming together. But yeah, I've done it my whole life. I mean, I think I did my first mural when I was 14.
Every fruit on the tree started out with a seed. So dare to believe the impossible is possible. And so your deepest dream, grow your truest dream, bloom your freest dream with me.
Welcome to the Artist Bridge to Abundance podcast, where we have real conversations with working artists about their creative journey and what it truly takes to build a sustainable and meaningful life through art. I'm your host, Michele Renee Stone, and today I'm sitting down with illustrator, author, and creative entrepreneur, Cindy Rodella-Purdy. Cindy is a lifelong artist with over 30 years of experience across both traditional and digital media. Her work spans everything from picture book illustration and storytelling to design, programming, and project management of the digital space. She's known for her vivid imagination and whimsical style, creating work that not only tells stories but also educates and engages audiences in meaningful ways. Through her company, Creative Cat Media, Cindy brings together art, design, and technology to create experiences that are both imaginative and impactful. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Let's begin.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Cindy. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, I'm so glad you invited me. This is great. I'm glad you're doing this. This is awesome.
Yeah, and having these kinds of conversations with artists who just have this breadth of experiences.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So you wear a lot of creative hats.
Yes, I do.
And so illustrator, writer, designer, artist. How did your journey begin? And how did all of those pieces come together?
I have been an artist since I was a child. Luckily, I had parents that fostered it, where they had a neighbor teaching me how to paint to when they sent me to the Art Institute or CMU for Carnegie Mellon for pre-college, and then Edinburgh University for a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. So I had all that in the beginning, but getting into it, once I got out of school, I've been doing art for 40 years, and I've made a living out of it. You'll always hear people say, oh, you can't make a living out of art.
Right.
Yes, you can. And I've done it for 40 years. And I've been really blessed with that. I've done a combination of corporate where I do production work, Adobe, Illustrator, InDesign, things like that. And I've worked for a lot of large corporations. And then on the other side of my coin, I do the art. And I do fine art. It's all coming together. But yeah, I've done it my whole life. I mean, I think I did my first mural when I was 14.
Wow. Up in Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania, yeah.
Because you're from Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh, yes.
Okay. That's just so incredible. And again, I was also raised with that idea that, artists can't make a living. And it's funny because the beginning of my life, I believed that, but then there was this calling inside of me that kept saying, no, that's not the truth. That's not necessarily the truth.
Right.
And as we move forward and kind of start to follow that calling, we see that everything starts to align, right? What drew you to illustrating and creating children's books specifically?
It was in 2004. I woke up with an idea for a story.
Okay.
And so I wrote it out. I had it all in my head, and I think in pictures.
Right.
And so if I read a story and I see it visually, I know I can illustrate it.
Okay.
Like if someone gives me a book and I read it and I don't see it, then I know I can recommend other illustrators, because an illustrator needs to see it,
right,
to be able to do it. And luckily, I'm very visual. When I read something, I visually see it. And so I got into that in 2004, and I sent my book out to probably like 150 publishing houses. I was really confident. And I got 150 really nice rejections. And that's when I learned I really had to learn the art of children's publishing. And there's a group called Society of Children's Writers and Illustrators. It's a SCBWI. It's an international group.
Okay.
Highly recommend anybody that's getting into children's books to join that group, just because it teaches you. I mean, you learn all the levels of what you can learn there. Also, Highlights Foundation had workshops and things. So I've always, one of the things I've always done, even though been doing art for 40 years, I always try to grow by going to learn new things and try to broaden myself, because things change and software changes and life changes, and you just find new ways of doing things. Keeps you young.
It does keep you young, and it's interesting because as one of the things that I'm finding out with every artist that I've talked to, essentially, and whether it's been on the podcast, outside of it, is that we have to pivot and we have to, but it's that constant. I think we're all curious beings at heart anyway, and to continue to learn is part of like who we are, like what feeds our soul.
And it's not a 9-to-5 job, because it's with creativity, or it's not a kind of job people say, oh, when are you going to retire? You don't retire from art. Mm-mm. You do that till you don't exist anymore.
That's so true.
You ride that ride all the way to the end. That's what my plan is.
I think about the word retire and I find it offensive.
Yeah.
Because
artists don't retire.
Yeah.
You can't stop creating. You can't turn off that flow. And in the last year, I just started really getting into encaustic, which I love. I just have a strong passion for encaustic art. So I'm really growing in that area now too, which is a lot of fun.
And you're learning it from Gina Whitewood, who is from my first episode.
She's one of my teachers. Also, Shelley Jean is another one of my teachers. But these, like I said, they have a wealth of information, and they teach at Tampa Museum of Art.
Right.
Which is awesome, And you can never not learn something. It's like, to me, it's like every time I get into something and then I learn how to do it, I'm like, I'll still go to a retreat or I'll still go to a workshop, because there's always a nugget. Right. There's always something that you don't know. Because when we ended up knowing everything, isn't it like Buddha says, that's it, you're done.
Exactly. Well, and each person has their own take on it, their own perspective, their own lived experience. And
they're fantastic teachers.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Gina is amazing. I don't know Shelley Jean, so I look forward to meeting her.
Yeah. They're both part of Florida Wax.
Okay.
I'm actually part of Florida Wax now, too. It's an encaustic group in Florida.
Okay.
And there's, I think, maybe 12 members. But encaustic is not really a huge population, actually. You find it's a small group of people.
Well, I mean, if you think about the way that it's created, you take beeswax and tree sap and create art out of it on like a harder substrate. And
it's one of the oldest mediums, actually, was used doing portraits during mummification. I mean, it's been around forever. It's just taken different forms. And Gina does a much better job explaining it than I do.
Oh yeah, she absolutely does. It makes me think of, I took a batiking workshop a couple of months ago, so something similar to that. Okay. So we were talking, you have a ton of experience in project managing. And when I was thinking about interviewing you, I was thinking about one of your superpowers is just getting things done very efficiently and you're very prolific, you're very you respond immediately, everything is just, you're so on top of things. How does your project managing experience influence the way that you approach art, both as a professional and as on a personal level?
It's really helpful when you're managing your own business, being a project manager. For a couple of years in my career, I worked at an agency and decided just to do project management, but then I realized I missed production. But being able to manage teams and getting people together to, pull all the pieces together. I'm definitely a left and right brain thinker. I know a lot of artists that don't do project management.
Right.
And I'm just very organized.
How about this? If you were thinking about the main reason for this podcast is to talk to experienced artists, to share their knowledge and the things they're the tools in their toolbox.
Yes. Okay. So some of the things I use, I use a timer on my computer if I'm doing a corporate work called, I believe it's called Chronos, and there's different timers out there. So when you sit down, I always turn the timer on, turn the timer off. Then I know it's okay, you did this time frame. I use Evernote to track all my projects.
Okay.
And then that way, and I do billing at the end of every month. So on the 30th of every month, I send out my invoices, and that's pretty much what I set up with people. I charge an hourly rate at my rate right now is anywhere between 75 and 90 an hour,
Right.
typically. I don't mind saying that because a lot of people won't share their rates. But if a client has a budget and says, oh, this is a budget, and I'll look at the project and say, yeah, I can do it within that budget. I can make that work. So a lot of it is looking at things, which is project management. Knowing your time is important.
Yes.
Like knowing it's like, okay, I know it's going to take me this long to do this, and I can pull it off. And then is there enough money in there to make it worth your while to do it? Are you going to run into costs? So you have to average in your costs, or you're going to have costs against your sales and stuff. So yeah, I think I'm lucky because my father was an engineer.
Okay.
And my mother was a manager, so I came from very organized people. So.
And that makes sense. I think a lot of people on the creative side of the brain that because we're driven by passion and we're driven by curiosity again, there's something inside of us and that we need to pull that out and create it for the world. There's another sense of like, how do we manage all of this? How do we market? How do we invoice? You talked about that. Like if we're doing projects for people, if we're a muralist or we're doing commission work or anything like that, we have to understand those elements.
Mm-hmm. You need payment. You need an advance payment. Make sure you always know make sure you connect with the person. I've had some things over the years where it's like, I find it very important to make visual contact with people, like Zoom.
Right.
Yeah, just don't go by emails.
Right. Well, and then also I think contracts are important too.
Contracts
like
are
laying
important
out, being really clear, even if it makes your stomach a little upset, or you get butterflies, like, oh my gosh, I need, can't we just like that? Think about it back in the olden days where it was, the gentleman, what they call the gentleman's handshake.
Right.
And so that doesn't work in today's world anymore because everyone has their own agenda. Everyone has their own thing that they're trying to do, that they're trying to convey.
And you have to know your deadlines, and you have to know, what the deliverables are. And Creative Cat Media, my husband and I started Creative Cat Media in 2010. I owned a company before that called Ovation Media in Pittsburgh, which I sold after, I had a business partner, and we sold it after 10 years.
Yeah.
But in 2010, my husband and I started Creative Cat Media, and he passed away 3 years ago. But he was a visionary. He could see things. He was a programmer, a photographer, and a drone pilot. So we were able to work really well together because our tasks never were the same.
Okay.
We were able to split it, But we both had project management behind us because how I actually met him is he hired me at an agency to be a senior project manager, and he was ahead of the project manager, so that's how I actually met him. So we both were on the same wavelength for a lot of times. So yeah, but I want to keep Creative Cat Media going as long as I can,
And so, what kind of things do you do with Creative Cat Media?
I do website production, logo development, illustration, brochure design, presentation work, photo retouching. I get a lot of photo retouching work. Pretty much what you would hire an agency for.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times corporations will come to me because, agencies are a lot more expensive. And you have huge teams of people. And a lot of times when somebody will come to me, it's like, I need this tomorrow.
Right.
And I can deliver it.
Right.
And so I'm very fast and I turn things around really quick. That's the advantage to using somebody like me.
Right, as opposed to when you have like a large corporation, you have to go down the chain of commands, and then there's time that gets lost in that. And if it's just you, you are the person.
Yeah, and what was it? I'm trying to think what year it was, but corporations do this all the time too. Every 10 years they cycle.
Right.
They bring everybody in-house and keep everything in-house, and then they go, oh, we don't want this, and they send everything out, and then they send everything out. And I've seen that, like, in my 40 years, I've seen that, like, every 10 years, where it goes out and in, out and in. But, luckily for me, they've kept me, and so I'm still going at it, which is good,
That's a great segue to, like, how has things, because a lot of the people that I talk to on this particular podcast, they've been doing this for, 30, 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. How have things changed over the last 40 years for you? And then also, especially with the rise of more social media, more AI, like right now we're really stepping into the whole AI thing. So.
Well, and I know a lot of illustrators, and I agree with them, because I have a lot of illustrator friends that don't like the AI because people were using the AI to generate the illustrations. Where I use AI is not for that. I use it for research and things like that. But to me, there is a place for AI in my life. No, I don't want it doing my illustrations because I'm an illustrator. But there is a place that I can use it in business and in life. But I know some people are like really adamant against using it at all. But it's like when, it's funny because when I started in art, there were no computer graphics. So we did press type. We did we did old school typesetting. And when computers came out, it was very similar to AI. Like everybody was like, "Oh, these computers are going to take our jobs. We're not going to have jobs." And so, whatever technology came out, I always embraced it.
Okay.
Like I dove into it and said, "Okay, what of this can I use? What can I utilize and do?" And when computers first came out, I did one of the first live presentations for a corporation on a big screen, and it was for Heinz. So I've just always jumped into the deep end. Like, forget the water wings, just like, okay, this sounds like a great idea, let's try it.
So when you talk about marketing, and I don't remember the exact terms, you may know it, but you have, for when people are starting to market stuff, you have the people who like jump in initially and embrace it, and then you have like the bell curve. You have those, and then you have like the ones who will kind of do it as they start to see that it becomes a trend, and then you have the ones that kind of do it more after they're starting to trust their friends, and then you have the ones that are like very, very at the end. So you're at the beginning of that bell curve.
I believe in all social media. I use social media. I jump in and do everything, and I try everything out. I don't use AI for illustration because that does take away from illustrators' jobs. But with production and, like you said, with picture books, if I'm hired as the illustrator, I illustrate it, but I'm also hired as the designer. Sometimes it's just laying out the books and putting them in InDesign and getting them ready for publication. I did that with a book about John F. Kennedy for one of my clients.
Okay.
And so what I don't really do is I market myself, but I don't do marketing because that's an art form on its own.
Right.
And that's why I say to people, like, when you're trying to do a book, you have a couple choices. You could do self-publishing through a company like Ingram Spark, and it goes out worldwide, or you could write your book and submit it to publishing houses and see if they'll pick it up and then hire an illustrator.
Right.
And so there's many steps that you can take to do it, and it just depends on which step fits for you and how hard you market it after you get it out there. So
right, and you brought 4 different books that are here for those of you who are listening here who don't see it on my YouTube channel. And so which one doesn't one come out in June, and this episode will be aired in August. So
The Fork's Tale is one that just came out last fall, and that's about a fork that lives in a diner. It's very kind of zen. He starts off in a dishwasher, goes through all this turmoil, and ends up back in the dishwasher. So, hard work day for the fork. So, and the book I have coming out, actually I'm the illustrator and designer on it. Barbara Williams is the writer, and it's called Kelly the Sweet Smelly Skunk, and it's a very great tale about being yourself, not being afraid to be yourself.
Oh.
So it's an awesome book, and so that comes out in June. It's actually coming out on National Skunk Day, which I think is June 14th. So by the time this podcast comes out, it'll have been out for a while. So it's super cute.
You can find that book anywhere right now.
You can find it right now. It's all available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, even local bookstores. If you go online and just put in the title, it's out there.
So you create such engaging characters. Like where do these characters come from? Like when you're illustrating these books, like the Fork's Tale, which you wrote and illustrated, like where did that idea come from? That's an amazing idea.
I was actually sitting in a diner waiting for a critique group to show up, and I thought, I wonder what it would be like to be a fork, And the thing is, I'm very, like I said, very visual. So yeah. I think in images, and I automatically think very much a character designer. I think some people would probably think I'm more of a cartoonist at times. Definitely Dr. Seuss-esque.
Yes.
I was very much inspired by him throughout my life. Very whimsical. Right. Sometimes I'll read somebody's script or their book, and I'll say, well, this is very visual, but it's very more realistic. And, you know, if you go out to SCBWI, you can actually search illustrators and find an illustrator to match your style. I mean, you can go out to places and hire illustrators, but that's another thing I would say be very careful about because, you know, copyrights.
Yes.
There's a lot of, you know, I've seen it happen that, you know, somebody says they illustrate it and it's like, it's not really the illustrator. They're mimicking an illustrator style or something. So it's best to, you know, go to a legitimate place like SCBWI and like search out illustrators or ask friends and say, hey, do you know an artist? Like here in Gulfport, we have a plethora of artists that could totally, I met a young lady last week at a gallery thing and I was like, oh, you could totally be a picture book illustrator.
What did she
You
say?
know, and I actually had a client that I gave the client her name, said that she would contact her. So hopefully the two of them will connect because she had a very specific style that I thought would be perfect. And she was open to it. So hopefully that'll work out for them.
Fantastic. So when because like I have several books that are kind of in the conception phase and I come up with stories too, but I haven't gone down that rabbit hole, if you will. And so, but I start off with like one or two ideas. Is that where you start with, like, as far as like the images, or do you,
It can go either way. It can go either way. Like I use Grammarly as an AI it's an AI tool, but I use it more to track all my books.
Okay.
Because I have about 10 books that I'm working on myself. And so, but sometimes the images will come first.
Okay.
You know, sometimes you do a couple illustrations and then all of a sudden the words flow around the images. But a lot of times, like, for some reason, 3 a.m. is a time where my brain likes to write books. And I wake up with an idea like, oh, that'd be a great book.
So artists are either night owls or they're like, you know, they wake up in the middle of the night or they start really, really early from what I'm finding.
I'm probably more of a night owl, I would say. Yeah. Definitely not an early morning person.
Yeah, neither am I. What has allowed you to build the sustainable career across the multiple areas of work?
Really believing I can do anything. I mean, it's really having that faith that, you know, sometimes you'll go down a path and we had talked about this before and all of a sudden the door shuts and you're like, okay, that door's shut, where's the window? Right. You know, and I had done cartoon series starting in like 2011 called Bunny Days. I did over 2,000 illustrations and I have them on products. I have them out there, but it was basically, you know, taking life one step at a time. I believe in living a life of joy. I believe my purpose is to share joy, and how do you share joy? It's a great way to share joy is through art.
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question or not, but
I think as an artist, it's important for us to diversify.
Yes, the diversifying that's the one thing is so important. Not just staying like, okay, I'm just going to do these paintings and this is all I'm going to do. Be open to what comes to you and say, wow, you know, that's interesting. I could try that. And, you know, if you take to it, it's great and you do it and do more of it. I mean, I've done so many different jobs like that, and it's like some are like, wow, that's really cool, I'd like to do that again, or yeah, that wasn't a fit for me.
Right.
And yeah, I think diversification, even I taught for a couple of years, I taught kids for a couple of years. That's a hard job. I commend all you teachers out there because that is one of the hardest jobs that I've ever done in my life.
and you know, teaching, because I teach, I can actually say that I've taught between 4 and 104. Mm-hmm. And so teaching children versus teaching adults is completely different.
Yes, I taught kids at a private school that were special needs.
Okay.
They're so creative.
Yes.
I mean, they were amazing, but it was exhausting. I realized I didn't have the energy to keep up with them. But it was something I tried. And I said, okay, well, you know, I did it for a couple of years, but at that same time, I was still doing my corporate work.
Right.
I've never let go of one to do the other. Right. You know, I just kind of add and take away, and like, okay, well, I'll do this for a while, and you know, whether it's a project manager or you know, working for some other company, but I do like working from home. It's nice. And I also have a studio in Gulfport that I rent, which is really nice for my fine art. So that's awesome.
So that you can kind of keep the two separate?
Yeah, and it helps, especially with the encaustic. It can get messy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to have a studio that I go to. It's, because I have 2 cats and they would love to play in wax, So that's not a good idea.
That's not a good idea.
Cats and wax don't mix, I'll tell you.
When you're creating work for children or like these books, how do you think that your work has an impact on them?
It's interesting. I love when I see a kid read a book. In fact, I went to see a friend who used to be an employee of mine and my husband's years ago, and she has a little boy, it's 2.5. And when I came in, she said, how I tell you about Cindy? Cindy's the one that wrote the books. And he brought me a book and he sat in my lap and I read it to him, and it's just, it's really nice to see a kid have joy in it and just be like excited about reading a book. One of the things I learned from working or going to my critique group, I have a great critique group in Dallas that I still participate in, but one of the things they teach you with children's books in general is that you don't try to teach a lesson, because kids will see that. They'll see right through it.
Yeah, they pick up on
Yeah.
it. They know intuitively.
Yeah. So you just have to, have a story, and if the story really feels like, there might be a message in there, but I think kids would like it, and, some people even do picture books for adults, it doesn't have to be for kids. It could be about location, where you live and what you do. But yeah, I've always been drawn to doing picture books and things like that. And it's funny because, like I told you, Dr. Seuss was one of my, somebody that I was really intrigued by. Well, he did a lot of advertising. That's what he did. He worked in advertising and did the books on the side. So and then he did his fine art. So he did the 3 worlds, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. Okay.
I have some books I have to show you. They're really interesting.
Yeah, well, and I think when I think of fine art, I have a tendency to, even as an artist, I have a tendency to think more along the lines of realism, impressionism.
Norman Rockwell, or
or, as you mentioned,
Monet. Yeah.
Well, we're here in Gulfport, and so there's a lot of very prolific artists here.
Yes.
They do a lot of plein air,
Yes.
a lot of...
There's a lot of talent here.
A lot of talent, and I look at that with fine art, and then I look at even my style. My style's a lot more whimsical, a lot very colorful, and I don't think of it as fine art, but people often tell me that it is. And then I have, I'm just dabbling back into my series of my hands and things like that. I consider that more fine art. So it's interesting, different people's perspectives on what fine art is.
Yeah, and I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, which is, I was trained in fine art, but I'm very illustrative. I'm very whimsical. I'm very cartoony. But yeah, some people might not call that fine art, but, not, I agree with you when you see a Picasso or, a Rembrandt or something. It's very, the words. And, one of the things I talked to a friend of mine who was a mentor of mine also, she's a really good cartoonist and a really good character designer that I've taken classes off of. We talk about, people use cartooning as a dirty word, or not a dirty word, but it's a bad word, and it's not a bad word. Look at Charles Schultz.
Right. Or all the cartoons that we were raised with, the family circus.
Exactly. Look at Mickey. You want to talk about a business.
Yeah.
Right there. There's somebody who turned a mouse into into a whole business.
Thank you for that. I had not gone there from that perspective. Thank you for that. Yeah. Wow. How about this? What does abundance as an artist mean to you?
Doing what you love, loving what you do. I know it sounds cliche, but I feel abundant if I can pay my bills and get my art supplies and share joy and just really enjoy what I do with my life. And I do. I feel that I have an abundant life. I feel that I've been very blessed with creativity and abundance. I have very Buddhist beliefs.
Right.
I converted to Buddhism in 2008, so I have very strong Buddhist beliefs about, really loving the moments that we're here for. And then we go somewhere else.
I saw something the other day on social where it said that one of my friends had mentioned that one of their friends had joined the ancestors, and I thought that was a beautiful.
Well, that's a really nice way to say it. That's cool.
Yeah, it feels very supportive and very loving,
and I feel like they're always around us.
Absolutely.
We're energy.
Right.
We don't disappear.
Absolutely. And everything is made up of energy.
That's it. Yeah. It's wonderful.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
Peace, love, and joy. It's a hill worth climbing. It's just putting joy out there, loving what you do, and if for some reason doors are closing, find a window, climb through it, and see if that offers something else. And I've been lucky to have things line up for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been very blessed.
I think
even with this interview, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm glad that you said yes and that you wanted to share, everything that you've learned over the years.
Wow, I hope, for young creatives out there, when somebody tells you, or even older creatives, when somebody says, oh, you can't make a living at it, that's not true. Mm-hmm. You can make a living at anything you put your mind to, anything you believe in. If you believe you can do it, you can do it. Yeah. You can manifest.
I've always told my son, what you think about, you bring about.
That's it.
And so if you think positive things, and I get into a lot of quantum physics, mm-hmm. and so I'll envision this podcast, and all the people. I was doing it this morning in my meditation, is just envisioning people listening to this podcast and feeling joy and feeling refreshed and feeling like
they can do it too.
They can do it too. They're getting nuggets out of it. Exactly. They're jotting down the places that you mentioned earlier about, how you can get the books illustrated and published and everything. And just the joy, and then wanting to share that information with others.
Yeah, and if anybody, I know you have my website and things, if anybody ever has a question for me, they're welcome to email me and ask me.
Absolutely.
I'd be happy to answer it. And that's the one thing about a creative life too, is there's plenty out there for all of us. Plenty. It's just, we just share it, live it, build it, just do it. Just believe, we're going to have everything we need. Yeah. We're going to be taken care of.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's been such a fun and inspiring conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I know that you've got a lot going on, and just kind of being here and sharing all of your wealth of information with us. So
I appreciate you inviting me. I really do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So for those listening, I encourage you to think about where creativity is always showing up in your life, like the possibilities of what that looks like. And this is the Artist Bridge to Abundance podcast. And I'm your host, Michele Renee Stone.
Seed to flower, magic's in your hands. You got the power, so go forth and expand.
I'd like to thank St. Pete Arts Alliance for their individual grant and making this particular podcast and everything that goes along with it possible. I'm so incredibly grateful to you. If you like the podcast that you just saw, go ahead and click that subscribe button and click the little bell next to it, so then that way you're notified every time we load up another episode. Look forward to seeing you soon.